Hello, I'm Steve. A little about myself. I'm a retired law enforcement officer with 20 years of service. I began my career in the jail, worked the road, and became an investigator. During my career, my training consisted of everything from SWAT to becoming a state certified crime scene technician. I've investigated crimes from thefts to homicides. After retiring and becoming aware of true crime and web sleuths, I started my channel for web sleuths to better understand the perspectives of law enforcement. Not only do we cover true crime, I go out into the field and assist families who have lost loved ones to homicide and their cases are considered cold. Join me as we look and bring attention to these critical cases. Hello, everyone. I'm glad you're able to join us tonight. If you're new to the channel, welcome. While you're in chat, we'll have a presentation. And during that presentation, if you have any questions, just throw them in the chat. And while you're here, be mindful and be respectful of the families, mods, and each other. We're going to be looking at a case tonight that we first started covering right after the Murdaugh case that we did a lot of work on. And of course, this Stephen Smith case out of South Carolina. I traveled over there at one point and did some research in the area, but it's been some renewal brought in and some things happening and some articles recently, everything from will the cell phone data provide and absolutely point the finger towards some individuals. What will the grand jury find? And there's a lot of speculation. Of course, the attorneys that are working for the family that are covering it. But we're going to be looking at mostly some of the or the injury and the location of what occurred and cover some of that because I did some more testing today trying to clarify some things I saw on a documentary. I believe it was 48 Hours did a documentary and in the last, I don't know, it's been recent. And through that documentary, we saw some clarifications on what the injuries look like, the fractures, the location, and what both the pathologist and Dr. Kinsey, who is the CSI expert that worked on Murdaugh, who is now working on this case, went out and covered. And so after watching that and trying to determine what could have happened and looking back at some of the old other evidence, I took, of course, I have a lot of these little things. And let me get this off so you'll be able to see a little bit better. But the injury that is portrayed that you can see on the documentary 48 Hours of Stephen Smith, of course, they have this injury that is about just over right at 7.5 inches. That's from the right eyebrow up into the midsection of the top of the top of the skull, and then with a secondary injury that they talk about, fracture and laceration to the back of the skull. And so when I saw that, I went out and got one of my mannequin heads that I have that I use in my code case and other cases, and which I have that I'm going to be working on some other cases with those same forms. But while I was out working, I'm here in Florida, so my neighbors got to see me for the first time out playing with or working with the forms and taking pictures and things, trying to determine how these injuries could and what parts of vehicles could possibly contribute to this type of injuries of where we have the lacerations to the skin over the skull, which is extremely easy that you can have lacerations, tears, and that and when that from blunt force injuries to even sharp objects, hard objects, flat surfaces, the the skin covering the skull is easily lacerated, and it oftentimes looks like you took a knife to it. Almost looks like it's something that's surgical, which is not the case. I've been there myself, whereas I've been involved in some close quarter things that were people's skin during fights and things. Their the skin would become lacerated either from my hands, flashlight, or even a shotgun butt stroke will absolutely bust that skin open. Seen it. And all through the course of my career, I mean, whenever you get in those types of situations, you do the best you can. And certain times injuries occur and you get to see that. And then also you work cases where you see from traffic accidents and people having impact, either being a pedestrian, riding a bicycle, or even in vehicle accidents where their heads will come in contact with parts of the car, road surfaces, signs, and those lacerations will occur. So you see quite a few of these head injuries, and that's how come, with our children especially, we have to pay close attention and make sure they wear some type of helmet to keep those head injuries and fractures from altering their life. But that's what we're going to be looking at tonight. And I have some pictures of some vehicles to give you a comparison, that if we had an individual of Stephen Smith's stature, that we would be able to see that and have comparative value. Of course, the two people that are experts that were in this latest documentary that I looked at and evaluated their information is Dr. Dupree, who's a pathologist. I think 3,000 plus autopsies. Quite impressive. And then, of course, you have Dr. Kinsey, who testified on the Murdaugh case, well qualified, took a lot of the new technologies that are out there and worked on the Murdaugh case. And then I believe he retired and was brought into this case by the family. And if you watch this latest documentary from them, he says that he is at scientific certainty of what happened there, but still charges or individuals haven't been brought to justice, and exactly what type of instrument, hard surface, vehicle part, even he mentions it could be a ladder, it could be some part of a vehicle that would have struck Stephen, causing this type of injury. But as we go through this and we cover a few of the things that I took from some of the reports that are out there, and from law enforcement, the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, reference to SLED, that you'll see that there are certain things that they speak of, that the initial scene consisted on the roadway on Sandy Run Road, Hampton, South Carolina. And then, of course, the vehicle, and one of the mysteries about this case is that Stephen's vehicle was found on another road about 3 miles away. And I went there and did some testing also to determine and of how his billfold was found. How could it have came into the position of being lost or being hidden between the front seat and the passenger side door. And if you go back and look at some of the testing, you'll see whereas if he had made a tight left-hand turn due to the forces, it would have pushed that billfold into that position. And I did some testing on that, and was is that the only way it could have gotten there? No, there's a lot of different ways, but that's one thing that might have led to the positioning of that. And then, of course, we have to look at some of the evidence of articles of clothing of what was found at the scene that Stephen was wearing, from his short sleeve shirt. And you'll note that on each of these things, specifically, they make note that the results, there was no automotive paint found on item 2 and 3, which is his cargo short pants, and no automotive paint found And of course, this is his shirt and his pants. And then they went in and took some cuttings from the item 3, and then also they looked at his footwear. And once again, no automotive paint found. And as has been discussed in quite detail over the years about that, generally when you have a traffic accident involving a pedestrian, your shoes are knocked off of you, or you're knocked out of your shoes, and the shoes are left there somewhere around this and on the road surface or off on the side of the road. And that was not the case with this one, and so that was something that they noted. Now, of course, there was certain things that were covered. Debris collected from items 2 through 4. So on all 4 of these items, that there was this. There was several single-layer metallic blue paint chips were found. Due to the condition of the sample, no make, model, or year information was able to be obtained. These paint chips are suitable for comparison should a standard become available. And what could that single-layer metallic blue paint chip have come from? And is it some type of vehicle? Is it from a ladder? Is it from some manner of a homemade cargo carrying that's on the back of a truck, that whereas you might, you see some of these work trucks that have customized framework. Is that something that might have struck him and have been painted blue with some type of this single layer metallic paint? And I spoke to a automotive expert that paints vehicles, and this single layer metallic paint is similar to that. It can be done in automotive shops with painters, but it's the same type of paint that you generally get with spray paint. That's what they refer to as a single layer or type of paints. And that it's not something that is put on there and during the process of how automotive paint sometimes is applied. But anyway, all right. And there's his shoes that were, I don't know if they untied them or if this is the exact conditions they found them in. But if they're were untied in this position and still on his foot, it's not something that is indicative of him being struck by a vehicle at all. All right, let's get out of that. And let's go into chat right quick before I get too far behind, see what's going on. Mrs. Steve, who is normally with me, is busy tonight. She had some work to catch up on, or she's starting to get back with me as much as possible of when I'm down here in Florida. All right, CJK, good to see you. Marion Tate says, thank you for all the work you do for the family, the True Crime Web Foundation. Thank you. It's an honor for us to be able to take what this community and what the contributors, not only to this community, but also to the foundation, that allows us to go out there and help these cold case families. Thank you. And I see here, Cindy's here, Marion Tate, Anna Lizette's here, Olivia, good to see you. Barbara Hall's here. And if you don't know who Barbara Hall is, it is one of the cold cases that we're working on. But if you look up the Timmy D's case, you'll see the fight for justice that Barbara Hall has fought for several years. And absolutely amazing story. There's Mary Cahill. Good to see you from Canada. Hello, Mustang 65. There's Jill Moser. There's Lisa. Hello. Michelle C. There's Brenda. Sharon Edwards. Just checking through here, see if I got any questions yet. I don't want to get too far behind because it's hard catching back up. Hello, Cunningham. Glad. Says Steve, glad you're covering this. Yeah, I just want to get back looking at it a little bit. Miranda Lee says, I was wondering if there was an update on this in this case. Like I said, we had that documentary that came out, plus there was an article or two that recently about would the cell phone data be what breaks this case? Could be, who knows? Yes. The Dr. Dupree says it's right at 7.5 inches as far as that injury. And so when you see it on the documentary, you'll see that it starts up here, almost at the. Let me get this thing at the top of the head, the vortex of the head, and then all the way down and over to the right eyebrow down in here. Now, is that from a single item, or is it part of a tear? And I don't know. She would know more of that. She would be able to associate that with the exact, while we may have this long of a laceration, how long is that skull fracture? And what is the condition of and what would have caused that, and how could we identify? And you can identify certain times, certain instruments or weapons when they're used due to what happens with the bones and the fractures with the bone. I don't know all the details surrounding the bone fractures, but the way that she explained it, that this here would have occurred from what Dr. Kinsey said, that they expect that this happened in being struck by something on a moving vehicle. Now, they may have more evidence, and they didn't go into it exactly to clarify how they could tell it was a moving vehicle, because I've caused some pretty similar injuries, especially with the shotgun and the flashlight, that are pretty large, that as far as lacerations. And of course, anything on the back of the head, if you strike your head when you fall onto the pavement, it can cause quite the laceration on the back of the head. And that's what they contribute those injuries to, either through being struck by whatever, I think he went into details that he thought that the vehicle saw him, came in and crossed lanes and then struck him. I don't know what other supporting evidence they have of that, or why he would state that, but I think that there has to be something for him to state that. Whereas, without all the information, I don't know if it's from just, I still could see, whereas it could be from someone in some type of confrontation with him with some type of weapon, or even from a vehicle. And when we get to these other photographs, because that I made after I get through all the evidence from the crime scene, that from my stand I made for this, that I was able to put this mannequin up at 5'8" and put him alongside a couple of vehicles out in the yard, so that you would be able to see that relationship. And that my son-in-law has a relatively large truck that is jacked up, and even with that, it still doesn't line up with the mirrors, and you'll see that in a few minutes. Let's see, Nightbot's here tonight. Hello, Sensei. Good to see you. Cunningham says, Steve, do you think skull injuries were from a vehicle? It could be. Seeing a CSI guy I have as much respect for as Dr. Kinsey, stating that it could be something such as some type of prefab rack or construction, or it could be something that is not reasonably secured in the back of a vehicle striking a pedestrian. It could be. But those paint particles that are on multiple parts of his clothing is something that I just don't understand, because if it's on his clothing, you would expect that those paint particles, if they were part of contact with the skull that created those that type of force, that there would have been some up there alongside near his injury. Now, was they, and they just didn't identify him? Could be. Who knows? But the hard impact's what I'm looking at. I know he had some other um, um, soft muscle injuries also that was from either, they said, a minimum of road rash. Olivia, too, was the truth hidden? You know, this is something that is absolutely, and the question, the real question to me is the truth hidden? And, I know you people look at it from who hides the truth. Yes, the truth is hidden from whoever caused or had contact or injured Stephen Smith that night. They have hidden the details of how that occurred. Um, was it just some type of because by the time this road surface, this roadway that this occurred on, it has to be someone from that community. It's not a main highway through this area. You would be there, especially during those hours, that you would be familiar to the location, and it wouldn't be coming from anywhere other than someone from that area. If it is, um, the as they surmise that it is the location that the where he is recovered is where everything occurred. Hello, Bama Sin, Sharon Edwards. Lori Sutherland says, when did you start your show? 8 o'clock Eastern. Rescue all the dogs. Hello. Good to see you. Hello, Pitbull Mom. Good to see you also. All right. Let's get back into this. And of course, this is his vehicle that I did some testing on as far as turning the vehicle and seeing how and why that vehicle could have been left there in that location with the gas cap off, and was it broke down? Was it staged? Because if you read the report offered by the State Patrol, there's officers that absolutely believe everything was staged, from the positioning of Smith to the positioning of his vehicle. So there will be that argument regardless. And we often see that if the defense, if anyone is ever identified for this case as being the offender, what will the defense and how will the defense look at that, and what narrative will they give it of who could have been involved that would have staged it in such a manner? This is locations of where his vehicle, where the yellow pin is. That's over it from the center of the photograph at the little yellow one at 3 o'clock to the one that's up around 10 o'clock, the little blue pin of the location of where he was at. And I was able to come and when I was taking the pictures, I looked up Stephen's height, which is 5'8". I think there's like a half-inch difference of what the notes made due to of his height in the coroner's report, but and his weight's 165 pounds. This is the position of him laying in the center of the road, not to scale, of course. You see these things either when they're created by SLED with whatever type of software they're using. And of course, these are the things that of all the things, these are what you look at. They have usually the best information. It's going to be those notes and the locations and how the person was lying and things. It's just part of our investigative notes that we have that was in the report. But at first, some of the officers that arrived on the scene early on, they thought that there had been some type of firearm used, and they credited the injuries to his head to a gunshot wound, which it turned out not to be the case. And after the autopsies of both the first and second, that it was more likely the striking of a vehicle. And there's always been this argument. And I don't really know. Like I say, I still can't say that I believe it absolutely is the striking of a vehicle. It could be, but it also could be someone in some type of confrontation from that could have committed this. Now, these are the two vehicles that I used. One of them is the Traverse. The vehicle that's, when you're looking at the screen, the light gray is a Traverse. I have the measurements for what that mirror is and what the window heights are. And on the blue truck, which is an F-150, full size, rather large truck, is higher than average. And you'll see that when you look at the vehicle, that you'll see the alignment of the windows, and which tells a story of what positions would someone have to be in to receive injuries, either by trying to communicate with someone in the middle of the road. I mean, how often have we walked up to a vehicle and leaned over and rested on the side of a driver's side window or a passenger side window and just stuck our face in to communicate with someone? Could that have led to this position? Could he have just went over to a vehicle and was struck by some object? Was he walking down the middle of the road and was struck by some object with a moving vehicle? And the fractures and the amount of damage, getting hit by a heavy object with a lot of force that's unyielding, you would expect almost to the point of decapitation or some of that, or extremely horrendous gaping injuries. And these fractures, like I said, I don't know how bad the fractures are, but it's not to the extent of some of the ones that I have seen in my career, for the fact that, like I said, it would have been noted and described in greater detail than what we have now. Oh, going the wrong way. But the height on the left side where the Traverse is, the height of that mirror is just over 4 feet. The center of that mirror is 4 feet. The top edge of that mirror is 50 inches. If you look at the mirror that's on the F-150, it sets up about another, the top of that mirror is at 5 feet. So there's almost a foot difference between these two mirror heights. But then when you put a mannequin in there, you can see that this is the mannequin, the top of his skull of this, the measurements is 5'8". That's what I did with this one, so that you could see what the height, if this was individual, such as Stephen Smith, standing outside of a vehicle that's 5'8" tall, that if a mirror of this oversized truck of this model, doesn't mean that they're, we see a lot of trucks out there that are even jacked up higher. Although this truck is jacked up pretty good, guys. But like I said, the Traverse, which is, sets a little bit higher than some of your sedans and smaller vehicles, and even a little bit higher than what Stephen Smith drove. But you can see the positioning, that if these injuries had to occur from either leaning into a vehicle in such a manner, or if someone is riding by and hanging out the window of a truck, that, I can see where they would have originally thought baseball bat, because if you hang out the window of that higher truck, I mean, it's dead center of the window pane on the blue truck. That you can see here from that, and you can see that from the smaller vehicles, that you wouldn't typically be able to strike someone with some type of object on the top of the head of a moving vehicle from a smaller vehicle such as the Traverse or a sedan, that you would to cause this type of injury. If you intentionally did it, it would have to be a larger, higher setting vehicle if you was doing it from the inside of a truck. All right, before we get too far, let's go back into chat, and before I get too far behind. just some observation I'm making, guys. If you have any, throw them in the chat there. Hello, Gibbo. We got justice for Timmy D's, Mustang 65. Thank you. And justice for Abby and Libby. Thank you again. Cunningham, Steve, does it look like Murdoch was involved in this somehow? Not that we have any information or anything I've seen at this point. I think even he has sought counsel and trying to file lawsuits on people that are implicating him in this. Mustang also for Kiana, Kiera, Real, and Keone, excuse me, but that's the floor 4. Anna says that John Bonet had a skull fracture, the link back to front of her head, probably a club or baseball bat type instrument. Absolutely. The head can be fractured, and if it's struck on a hard surface, I mean, a lot of times you'll have those lacerations, or at least ones I was involved with did. Mustang, I'm sure you spelled them correctly, but I would probably have mispronounced, and I hate to do that. And hello, Phil. Good to see you. Elevate the process. Good to see you. Sharon says, I thought him being struck with the side mirror of a truck and they didn't see him was a plausible theory. And there's nothing wrong with that argument. But the truck would have to be higher. And but typically when you see, and I've seen it dozens and dozens of times, of where mirrors have struck objects and either human or, other vehicles, mailboxes, they shatter, they break away, plastic parts, the mirror itself, even the ones that are metal that you see, even with some of the semis, that glass is, that's debris. And you would have that debris in the clothing, you'd have it on the road surface, and we don't have that. Doesn't mean that they hadn't busted the glass out of it before and had a mirror on the truck that was broken that hit him. Could it be? It's possible. It really is, but we'll just have to see. Let's see here. Hello, Karen Langston. This is another case out there, if you are unfamiliar with, justice for Doug Till. He is another case that happened up in Fredericktown, Missouri. Absolutely, this is another mother that's been fighting for justice for quite a while. Yeah, you would think the blue paint, even with the mirror, how does the blue paint get on? And they talk about that it was collected from items 2 through 4. All the items had this blue paint on it. Was it some craft that he was doing that night that had that blue paint on? Was it some type of, I don't know. It makes no sense. But that they kept it, and if they have a standard, they'll be able to test against it. Miranda says this could have tried True Crime Web, because this person have tried to run Stephen over. He moved out of the way, but something like a hook or chain hit him and hit. Like I said, I know what Dr. Kinsey says, that he believes it could have been some part of a moving vehicle. It was heavy and was at a certain rate of speed. I don't know what he bases that on. I'm sure he has more information than what I have, but that's what he stated. Like I said, I've seen similar injuries that I've done face-to-face to individuals were skull fractures. I just don't know how severe those skull fractures were. So I don't have all that information. Lori says, how tall was this kid? He was 5'8". On these vehicles here, this is how high a 5'8" person would stand, because the stand that I built and placed that head, I measured it exactly at 5'8". Bill Bond. Let's see. Lori says, where would his head hit his head on a car or bat or wherever it was? And that's the thing, that if it's a car, he would have to be leaning over for the traverse to cause such an injury, the vehicle to the left. And I just using these types of vehicles for comparative values of showing you a mid-sized vehicle versus a high riding vehicle such as this truck, from a medium-sized vehicle to a large vehicle, where a 5'8" person would stand. If you have a smaller vehicle such as his head would even have to be lower for it to occur from a moving vehicle. And, could someone be sitting outside the vehicle in a traverse or any type of vehicle and be able to strike downward or straight across to get this type of injury? Yes, but that's highly unlikely. But if you're laying or have something stuck out the window of a truck, that might be possible, for the fact that you can see that his eyebrow is, his eyes are almost dead center of what that blue truck is. And then I even took it to the back of the truck, so that if we had some type of cargo area or some customized framework that was in the bed of the truck or something sticking out from the truck, that on this specific truck, this is where his head would be, just above the truck bed area. And so you could have something, some framework that's hanging outside the vehicle that, if it's in the right position, that could cause this type of injury. And then I went to the front of the vehicle. Got me a good reflection of his face in the window there that you can see. But like I said, I wanted to show you the comparative values of how these injuries could be. Either some individual standing out there face to face, and what type of encounter could have caused these injuries. But now, if you look back, and there's nothing that says that a smaller vehicle couldn't have caused these injuries, but he would have to be leaned over, or he was speaking to someone in the driver's seat or passenger seat. And could those injuries be occurred from someone from a sitting position and striking out and knocking him to the ground, and him striking his head and then rolling over to that? Miranda says, I don't understand how his head could have hit a ladder. Like I said, there's a lot of vehicles out there that have ladders, and vans that have ladders, not just the trucks, even work vans, that you'll see them, these ladders, and even plumbers, they'll have ladders and they'll have framework in the beds of their truck that sometimes are outside the bed and almost parallel with the mirrors. Is that what Dr. Kinsey is hinting at? It's possible. Hello, Mr. Scott. You're not late. You're all right. Oh, Brenda. Brenda has gifted a True Crime Web membership. Thank you. There's your blue light. Thank you for your support. This is a really good question. Did the head injury start? Was the initial impact with whatever at the back and go forward, or forehead to back? And this is something that in the details that I don't have, and it wasn't noted, because you can see that there is, now this is what I recreated as far as the drawing of the injuries with mine. was from the form that Dr. Dupree used. Now, some of the medical or some of the charts that was in the documentary, they have a little bit more of a ragged edge to it, almost like there was tearing. And would the pathologist be able to tell, was there some tearing that had occurred? Extremely possible. And if that was not from tearing and was from the impact with that hard surface, that could be a telltale sign of exactly what the outline of the item that struck him in the head was. That would be ragged, and what type of face it would be. And it would tell in which direction. That sometimes you can tell exactly which way it went and how it went. But I just don't know. But that's a great question. Let's see. I don't know what evidence. Miranda Lee says, True Crime website. You do. So do you think the moving vehicle wasn't moving very fast? I don't know the extent of the fractures and the damages to the cranial vault, for the fact that if it was moving extremely fast and struck him at extremely high speeds, you could have the potential of catastrophic skull injuries and damage. I don't think that is the case with this. I don't have the full report of it, so I don't know. But from what I'm assuming that it was a lower speed. Although Dr. Kinsey says it's something moving fast and had a lot of mass. And I don't know what he bases that on, but I'll take his word for it. Dandy Linus, good to see you. Bama Sin. It's good to see you looking rested tonight. Thank you. I am. I'm feeling a lot better. I've been so busy. And Lana says, sometimes jaywalkers bend forward and run fast, thus head would be lower than maximum standing height. Could be. Like I said, though, I really don't know. Could he have even been just leaning in to talk to someone? Possible. Could it have been a roadside encounter or some type of standoff and some type of fight? Possible. Could it be a moving vehicle? Absolutely. There's all those, but they seem to be quite positive that the injuries occurred at this location and due to the body fluids and blood loss that occurred there. And Mustang says, what about those trucks that have those long side mirrors? Yes, that's absolutely, that are even higher than this. Yes, logging trucks, some of those trucks absolutely could have been. Karen says, that's what I drive, Mr. Steve. And that's something else on the have tow mirrors on a truck. They stick out really far. But you would expect with those tow mirrors and things that you would have some type of debris. But anything's possible. Hello, Gail Hurd. Good to see you. Miss Cyrene says, what bothers me is one or more knows what happened. Yes, I mean, and they're from that community. Like I said, this isn't an outsider. I mean, when you travel to that location, I've been there, I've walked those roads, I've drove up and down every street there and looked at it. And who's going to be out riding around at that time of hours, in those early morning hours? It's the locals, just like he was discovered by a local earlier in that morning that made the 911 call. Melenic, Nisk. Hello. No, this isn't the walking stick. I have another framework to hold these that I can, that this framework here, you can't really see it, but you can, whenever I stick a head on it, it will, you can adjust it to whatever height you want if you wanted to. And I just used it for ease whenever I'm working with some of them sometimes. With whatever type of test I'm doing at the time. Those big mirrors, could they drag him, the tow truck mirrors? Yeah, but if he was towed or he was drugged any distance, you will have, of course, drag marks, road rash, items such as the shoes being drug off, and or indicators of severe road rash, and we don't have any of that. Anna says that some of those mirrors could be 20, or they had a friend that paid $2,500 for one mirror. Wow. Thank you, Mustang 65 Justice, for Doug Till. So was the damaged mirror found in Murdoch's barn kennel, or do we know that yet? No, there was no mirror found. There's nothing indicating of what caused those injuries. They still don't know. And it's absolutely amazing that, even from the forensic side of it, that they know it wasn't a gunshot. And they just don't know what type of item could have caused that injury. And this is where, like I said, I don't know. It could be either or. Mary Cahill says hit and run or an assault. I still say it could be either way. What do you think happened? The position of the body of laying in the middle of the road, um, why would he be standing in the middle of the road to get struck in the middle of the road? That makes no sense. And for the fact that if there's a fast traveling car, we don't go out and get in the middle of the road and be struck in the middle of the road. And so I personally right now, and I don't know what Dr. Kinsey is going on, but I really don't think so much from a moving vehicle right now. If they have more evidence, I'd need that. Right now, I'd look more personally, and I'm speculating only, of some type of physical encounter with an individual. That's just for the position. I mean, out in the middle of the road, he's not to the point of being intoxicated to the point that he's staggering around in the middle of the road. Hello, Bling. And Dandy and I are at agreement on this. I have a hard time believing he didn't see a vehicle lights and get off the road if he was on it. And exactly, I just don't see that, if he was drunk out of his mind, intoxicated out of his mind, some type or unconscious, absolutely. But I don't have that. If it was a moving vehicle, you think it's more than one person doing this to him? No, I mean, if it's just a moving vehicle, it could be just simply an accident. They didn't see him, swerved and hit him. What side of the road was hit? He is dead center. This is his position. He's on the center line, and that's the thing. How and why would a person be in the center of the road and receive this type of injury? Makes no sense, and not any debris. And so I can see why some officers would think that he's staged there. I understand that. I've always thought it was an event like a mailbox bashing with a bat. Yeah, I went down there. There's a lot of mailboxes, and they have those signs that have blue fiberglass paint. Was he on drugs or anything? I can't remember what his intoxicant level was, but I don't think it was any. Yes, this is what Kenzie says. He was hit in the front first, fell back on the road, and fractured when hit head on the road. Yes, that's what they're saying. But could it be? Absolutely. It may be that simple. But why would he be standing in the middle of the road? Don't know. Missy Scott says, our TCW community, Mr. Steve, you are a blessing. Thank you. Appreciate your support. There's your blue light. Thank you. Holly, good to see you. Cunningham says, were there any tire marks on his body? No, not that I know of, and none that were mentioned. And we can look at his clothing here, and you can see from it, of course, there's his shoes. There's nothing really indicative on them. His pants, not much. Of course, with a shirt, nothing on these items. Yes, SP-74 says, didn't the first responders initially think the wound over Stevens' right eye was a possible gunshot wound, meaning an injury from the front? Yes, and they brought in some other, I think some state investigator came, and they didn't agree with that on scene, and which they were eventually correct. It was not. Lori says, did his mom say that he would have walked across the street and into like a forest to get home? So he was walking to get the other side and wanted. His mother, of course, has been fighting this fight for justice for quite a while. And what is the final answer? That's what she wants to know. But I haven't, she may have said a lot of things, and I don't know if she specifically said this. I know that she said something about that he may have walked through some woods at one point, but I don't know. Miranda says, do you think that Stephen left his car and walked the 3 miles? Or do you think he was picked up by someone? I think he walked the 3 miles. Let's see. Gail says, look like the walking stick. Yes. Actually, it was in the vehicle, but I didn't use it. Mary Cahill said, why is his clothing pristine, weird, not ripped or anything? And that's the thing is that there was no dragging. There's not, doesn't look like he was any type of fight, whereas clothing was grabbed, pulled, or any of that, or torn. And the road rash was minimal. So whatever happened, we have those 2 blows. Was it from a moving vehicle? Was it an individual that struck him and he fell back and hit his head, causing the second laceration? All of those are possible. Hi, Mr. Steve. I missed the first 26 minutes, but I wanted to catch you live, so I'm a little behind. Oh, you're fine, Carlene. Thank you for being there. When did you go back down there, and how did you decide on these two vehicles? These two vehicles, the reason I chose them, that, let me get going right directions. The reason I chose these two vehicles is they're vehicles I didn't have to round up. They're what they're easily. First of all, they're what I have access to. They're a mid-sized vehicle and a higher truck. And so using these two vehicles, I could easily make the measurements and show you that on what is probably the average two larger vehicles that you will have to the general population is something like this. Now, there are much larger vehicles, but I just use this for comparative values. But I've only been down to South Carolina that one time. I haven't went back yet, but I plan to, but I just haven't went yet. I've got to go over there. I've got a team member that's over there I need to go speak to anyway. But whenever I go back over to see him, I will drive back through there. But yes, the only reason I picked these is just to show you of what a 5'8" individual, which is the height of what this head form is, 5'8" from the ground on these two vehicles, shows you that the exact height of what it would be, and it's just for comparative value. Not saying that these vehicles are the ones that could have been. And yes, Carlene, at hour night, especially at night, you hear vehicles and, nobody's going to sneak up on you. I don't care if it's one of the new electric vehicles. You can hear the road surface. You're not going to hear, nothing's going to sneak up on you. And I agree. He would have seen the headlights, plus he would have heard the vehicle. Miranda says, could Stephen have wanted to self-harm and he stepped next to a vehicle and was hit by something hanging off a truck? The odds of him wanting to commit self-harm and running into an individual and who didn't notice it is extremely huge. So I doubt that. I really do. This is something that we don't know. There was reference made in this latest documentary on 48 Hours by a family member of the mother that made reference that she believes there's something on his phone. Because he had been mentioning he had some type of pending travels with a recognizable individual from the community. And Anna says, I wonder if he could have gotten into a fight, fatally injured, after which he was deposited on the road. Possible. Yes. The thing about is the loss of blood that where would the transfer, where would the other be? It could be in the vehicle if he was upright. And then when they dumped him out of the vehicle, could he have sustained a second injury that was later? But I think they said that and Dr. Kinsey hinted at that some of the flow patterns that were on the scene indicated that everything occurred at the scene. How much biological material was at the scene? I don't recall. Dr. Kinsey seems to think that all the biological material is at this scene. Gail says, did it knock his shoes off? No. Dandy says, my oldest son was hit while crossing the street. The car was traveling at a low rate of speed, and he lost both shoes. I've seen it. Wet sand on the bottom of the shoes. This was fresh. Yes, but there's some sandy, and when I was down there, there's even ant hills around there. Yes, if y'all look up the case or see some of the information on from Karen about her son Doug Till, but he was placed and staged on the road from information gathered that is extremely suspicious, and that of how his death occurred and how it's been explained. Um, I wonder if someone put his shoes back on him. It's strange he was hit and his shoes were on, and that's what I'm saying. I don't. I think it's more of some type of encounter with someone. Either he's leaning in a vehicle, or they strike him uh, from the vehicle. Not so much with the vehicle, but that's just my personal feelings right now. But like I say, I'm speculating. Couldn't he have been soldered right there? Dr. Kinsey didn't see that site for years. I don't know what he's saying, by the way. Um, I watched it, and like I said, I don't know what evidence, because he says that he thinks that the vehicle crossed the center to strike him in such a manner. I don't know if he has a specific narrative of understanding of who the persons are being looked at. For him to say that, he would have to know the direction they're coming from the blood spatter and from certain details that haven't been released. And I don't know. But for him saying that, there's a reason. Let's see here. It's very kind of you, Anna. Very kind of you. Sensei says, True Crime Web, were there any headphones found near the scene? Could he have been listening to music thinking he'd be safe so late at night? I can't remember. There was something about headphones somewhere at some point, but I don't know if it was this. Um, but nothing I know um, uh, that would have played a part in it. For the fact that if he was listening to them, they would be either on the road, and they would have been they would have told a narrative that we don't have, and so not that I know of that was showed any type of impact. Could he have stumbled to the middle and then fell? It's possible, but is there a blood trail? And how far would he have staggered? But yeah, there is that possibility, Gil. Tom Tan, hello. Good to see you. Gail Hurst says, I guess there were tire marks, skid marks. Not that was noted. Truth exposed. Sounds like a couple of guys pulled up on and swung the ball back. It's possible. Love to Hunt says it thought that for a long time it could have been a blue four-wheeler struck him. And cell phone data from the tires could be critical as there are so few in the area. But the cell phone data and tower signals, I went there and did the testing when I was spent time in the area. Some of that area you have absolutely no signal. Bling says, I'm back, couldn't stay away. But anyway, guys, like I said, I just wanted to cover this stuff tonight and give y'all a little bit of insight. And I'm hoping that something, hello, Drunk Turkey Show. How you doing tonight? I've got to get in touch with you, Drunk Turkey, Daniel. I need to send you an email. I have a request of you. Anyway, and I just wanted to give y'all a little bit of what I was looking at and trying to figure out, giving y'all something whereas you'd be able to look at it a little bit better, understand his height and what two common vehicles on the road would, where he would stand as these vehicles passed, and see what might possibly have occurred. But we appreciate y'all being here tonight. Y'all stay safe out there. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up, share it. And we appreciate everyone's support. That helps us in so many ways. But y'all stay safe out there, and we'll see you soon, guys. Bye.